Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Future Proof, the podcast where we're decoding how leaders, founders, and execs are reshaping the business landscape using AI, data, and automation. If you're looking to future-proof your business, you're definitely in the right place. And before we get started, we always say this, our company is a B2B growth company. So if you're looking to grow or just figure out where AI might fit into your business, there's links in the show notes on every episode. We'll book 30-minute no pitch. If we can help, we're happy to talk to everybody. But let's jump into today's episode. I'm joined today by Dr. Michael Sprintz from Cellarian. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Brent, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, let's jump right in, right? As we always do. Let's talk about the leader's journey and basically your background leading up to Cellarian.
Well, I had actually a very interesting background. So I'm originally trained as an anesthesiologist, did a fellowship in pain management. I'm boarded in pain and addiction, and as well as anesthesia. I had a clinical...
Which is a massive topic right now across basically all the world, right? Let alone the U.S.
Yeah. I'm a subject matter expert at the intersection of chronic pain and addiction. So I do a lot of consulting and public speaking on helping people identify and address that problem. And then from there, I had a clinical practice, which we had our own in-house clinical toxicology lab. And I was part of a team from the American Society of Addiction Medicine that wrote the guidelines on appropriate clinical drug testing. And so all of this path, which seems completely unrelated to a healthcare software company, actually resulted out of a need for what I found in my own clinical practice, where the payer policies were so cumbersome in terms of documenting medical necessity. It was impossible for myself or my partners or any other clinicians to document well enough to support medical necessity. Not that it didn't exist, it's just we just didn't have time to document it as detailed as it needed to be. And I looked around for a solution out there, and there wasn't one. So because of my experience in writing the guidelines, understanding payer policy and reimbursement issues, we developed an algorithm that takes all the information that a provider puts in when they order a clinical lab test, like a drug test, and turn it into a unique patient-specific, payer-specific documentation of medical necessity that supports compliance and reimbursement. And so how did I get to Cellarian? Well, Cellarian is a company where we automate medical necessity documentation for compliance and reimbursement. And that's really how it was born, out of a need in my own practice with my own lab, because as we know, denials are skyrocketing right now from payers. Prior authorizations are skyrocketing. And again, prior authorizations are just denials in advance. So you have a medical necessity case, and there's a unique payer issue or a unique reimbursement structure between labs, payers, and clinicians. And it's unusual in that the lab runs a test for a doctor, but then the lab tries to get paid for that. And the payer says, look, I need medical necessity documentation, which the lab's not the ordering provider. And so what happens is the lab gets stuck having to chase down a doctor to get them to document extensively enough so they can get paid. So imagine if you had to go to every one of your customers and ask them to do more work so you could get paid.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And if you've ever seen, and I know you've seen it, but if you're listening to this podcast and you've ever seen the follow the money map in the healthcare industry, it will make your head explode. And what Michael's talking about is just one piece of it, right? But to your point, think about that. If you had to go to all your customers, right, to do documentation just so you get paid, that's just crazy. And what I love is that this solution is born. This is entrepreneurial 101. You saw a problem within your own practice, and you're like, hey, if my practice needs it, all these practices needs it. And there is how a single problem for a single solution to that problem. And that's how usually some of the great companies are built. So I love that you did it this way.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been an adventure, that's for sure, but it's been fascinating. And I think now we're at a point where the timing, where the need has really, the demand and the need and the pain has gotten bad enough that we're seeing a rapid amount of growth right now for our solution, and we're the first to do it. So we're doing our best to get out there and let everyone know we're available. We can help.
Awesome. That I love that. So talk to us now about, now we know why Cellarian was started. Talk about your vision for it, and who's your target users? How are you going to get this into those practices and get people using this software?
So my vision really was to develop a platform technology that could take data from multiple data sources and generate unique documentation that supports the clinician. Ultimately, my goal is, how do I help providers focus on patient care instead of paperwork?
Yeah.
But do it in a compliant way that supports them and enables everyone to get paid for appropriate work that they do. Because that's the big thing is, and the frustration among labs, among physicians, among hospitals, among anyone in the healthcare space, is they're not getting paid for appropriate work that they're doing. Right. And, the playing field is not level by any stretch. And really, for me, it's important to help level the playing field so that people who deliver quality care get paid for that. And so
otherwise they can't run their practices very well, right?
People go out of business.
Yeah.
So when we look at who Cellarian's target market is, our current target market within the lab space are clinical reference labs, hospitals that have labs, and physician-owned labs. Anyone who is billing for clinical lab services, we can help them, right? Because the doctors don't have time to get this work done. We're able, as an automation clinical documentation company, to help generate that documentation in a compliant way so the labs get paid for the work they do without having to chase down the doctors to do something they just don't have time to do.
Yeah. Now, so everyone's familiar with companies like LabCorp, right? But there's also all of these other labs that are either in office, they're in hospital, right? Or, so there's hundreds and hundreds of those as well. But yeah, 1,000, right? There you go. And to me, they're your prime target, but is it also the people that are sending, the providers that are sending to big companies like LabCorp as well? Is it broken between those as well?
I think it's broken across the board in terms of documentation, but I think the larger huge giants like Quest and LabCorp, they have a very diversified suite of services, and because they have economies of scale and have relationships with the payers, I think that I do believe that they absolutely get denials and rejections on medical necessity related issues. But I think that they have such a diverse suite of service lines, and
it's not as big a pain as it is for all the other ones. Got it.
It's not as big a pain. They have that scale that enables them to weather that as part of just their business model. Where as you start to look at hospital labs, there's a ton of physician-owned labs, which is one of very few start compliant ancillary revenue opportunities and services that physicians can do. And when you start talking about a physician lab group, especially the ones that may have 4, 5, 6 locations, they're big and it is significant. And then you also have clinical labs that are regionally located, right? So there's a ton of those as well, in which they still fight day after day with claim after claim with payers trying to get paid for that. And they may not have the billions in the bank for lobbyists, for direct relationships and national contracts. And they're fighting tooth and nail for every claim, because when you're looking at a 20 to 30% denial rate month after month that you can't recoup because you don't have the documentation. Literally, the labs have up until now just lived with the fact that they're going to take a 20 to 30% haircut month after month, and there wasn't anything they can do about it. Ooh. And Cellarian flips that and solves that problem.
That's amazing. And I was just thinking about my own doctor that has their own in-house, which I love, right? Lab, right? Because then I didn't have to go set up an appointment with the other one. But this is exactly the kind of thing where for them to be able to maintain that, right? They have to be able to get paid and solve this problem. And it's so funny because I feel like, and again, I go back to that follow the money thing, but what's What's funny to me is that if you remember, and I know I'm sure you do, but the whole patient and medical coding issue, right? Where if you put the wrong code on at the front desk or whatever, whoever's in your records department, right, you're getting denied by the insurance company. And again, it just delays and it kills cash flow for
cash flow.
Right. And there was a big emphasis, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 years ago about this, and if everyone heard about it, right? Yeah. I feel like we're just moving up the chain. You're solving the next big problem, and it's a very specific thing, but it's the same end goal, which is to help the providers get paid for the good services they're doing.
I had, in my clinical practice, we had 7 healthcare providers, and we had at least 6 employees whose entire job was just to help us get paid for the work we did. That was
crazy.
Insane. Right. And one of the things I think that in healthcare is we tend to throw people at a problem, and you just hire more people. Well, people are expensive. Yep. They make mistakes and they're slow. And so we're at this point where the margins have gotten so tight that you can't, most practices can't afford to do that. And so really the solution, and what's wonderful about how technology has advanced and really leveraging that, is the ability to, like for Cellarian, to leverage the technology that we developed to create compliant, automated, clinical support documentation that enables the doctors and the labs to operate more efficiently, yet still have a higher level of compliance without having to add people. And that's really significant in terms of survival. When your margins are tight, every claim matters.
Absolutely. So it's a perfect lead into where I was going, which is now, because you can't, and again, I have been doing a lot of business with small medical practices for a long, long time, and I have some friends that run them. So I'm more familiar with some of the things you're talking about than most. But I've always saw those practices trying to solve problems by throwing bodies at it, right? Which you said are very expensive, right? And when they're doing 100 things, they're going to miss stuff. They're human, right? So my thought is this is where giving some of those key people on that staff an AI digital co-pilot, right, to help them do that, right? We're infusing AI where it makes sense into a platform like yours is where you can actually solve this problem at a very high accuracy rate, right? Which is the most important thing for them to get paid. And so how do you envision this and where those AI models can help make this better for everybody? Because you can't just keep hiring people, right, to fix problems.
Well, and there's a couple points in this in this question that you're asking. So, one of the first things, there's a lot of technologies out there in revenue cycle management that leverages AI and other algorithmic engines to identify, to look at a claim, to scrub a claim, to tell you what's missing, right? There's a lot of folks out there that do that, and they do it very, very well. The difference and the key competitive advantage from Cellarian's perspective is while everyone else out there tells you what's missing, Cellarian's the only company that actually creates the missing documentation that they need in order to get that claim paid.
That's awesome.
It's really fantastic. So we're a perfect complementary fit to a lot of RCM billing companies and folks that have the rest of the suite of services there, but they don't have this piece. So we fit well in that regard. Now, when you start talking about AI, the key thing that I always like to, my CTO and I have had numerous conversations about this, because on the hype level, AI is amazing and what it can do is amazing. But the key thing to remember is that, or at least the way that we look at it, is AI is a tool, not a complete solution.
100%.
Especially in the healthcare space, especially for where we're working at with medical documentation, patient care, the problems that we currently have with AI, hallucinations, making up things to fill in the gaps, inaccurate information, can have devastating effects when you're documenting medical necessity or you're documenting clinical care for patients.
Nowhere more important than in healthcare. Nowhere more important.
Absolutely. That said, the advances in AI and automation is incredible. And for instance, the way that we leverage it, we understand it's a tool, and our entire algorithm was built, I'm a subject matter expert in this space. I've got deep domain experience, but then you also have to understand the nuances of decision-making in medicine and the regulatory component. And that's really key for us in the way that we leverage AI is we leverage AI to improve our efficiency. It helps us both from an efficiency standpoint. It helps us to accelerate our development timelines for new product lines. And that's really important when you're looking at efficiency, accuracy, compliance, and development. So we leverage it as a tool on top of our methodologies and our proprietary rules engine and our algorithm, which was built from the ground up from someone who's lived in that space for a long time. And I think that's the key as these new technologies are going to come in. And I think they're best leveraged right now in terms of improving operational efficiency, in terms of automating tasks that are repetitive, but don't necessarily where an error in there you don't want an error that results in a clinical decision that impacts patient care. That's a level of error that at this point, AI is not yet there yet. And so, but it's fascinating and everyone is experimenting and trying different things. And I think it's wonderful. The key thing is to remember it's an incredibly useful tool. And if you use that tool really well, then it can help your core product or business really accelerate.
And what I love about what you're saying is this is where within your product, you know your end-to-end workflow and you know where to insert it to make that workflow sing, right? And be more efficient. And that to me is the magic of having a subject matter expert with the thinking about where emerging tech of any type fits in to make that a better experience and better. It really comes down to better outcome, right? That's all that matters, right? At the end of the day. Yeah.
We found a lot of folks there are companies with a whole lot of money and they'll build something and try and find a use for it. And then later on, they'll call in an expert to evaluate the technology. And I've been one of those experts in other things when I do consulting for med tech companies where they'll be like, all right, look, this is what we got. And this is we want to enter the pain space or we want to enter the addiction space. And there's a point where it's like, you didn't think about this or this or this or this. And then there's this whole go back and fix it and all of this stuff versus for something like what Cellarian did. We started at the foundation with experts, both from the tech side, from the clinical operational side, and from the domain, from the literally subject matter clinician who's lived that for decades. And that's how we build ours. So the advantage is you create a better product faster with less expense by doing it that way.
I totally agree. It's so funny because I watched a podcast of the committee from Y Combinator, right? And they had the CEO from Case Text, and he talked about a very similar experience to what you're doing, right? And they sold their company to FindLaw, right? And basically they brought in attorneys, right? Were SMEs like you and interviewed them and made them talk to the AI to train it to see what the outcomes. It was really like a pilot program, but it said, how would you have your paralegals do this research? How would you attack this case? Right. And so that is exactly what you're doing. You're actually saying, here are all the things to think about. Here are the use cases that you have to consider. And to me, that's how you trained a small model, right, on a single focused outcome. And to me, that's where people are missing with AI right now. I think that they think it'll just solve the world. Your way you're attacking it, Michael, is the right way to think about it is, how do I infuse it into what I know is the right end-to-end workflow to provide the outcome for my end customer?
Yep. That's it.
Yeah. So kudos. I love your thinking, the way your thought process. I hope people that are watching this are thinking, wow, I can do this in my own use case that I'm doing. And it really comes down to you solve the problem and understand the value of the solution. So talk to me about now, how will this affect do you think in the medical practice, do you see other solutions, right? Because obviously this is one issue that was near and dear to your heart, but I can imagine there's a multitude of these within the payer provider process.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've been approached by different specialty groups, by pain management, by cardiology, by emergency medicine, ambulance companies, urgent care centers, behavioral health. There are infinite number of different types of opportunities out there in terms of automation and documentation. Each one has a different workflow. It has different problems and different issues. And so that's really where it takes that level of expertise and understanding. I mean, for us, Cellarian built a platform technology that is incredibly flexible and agile. And for us, we can adapt that to any of those specialties. For us, it was a matter of having a customer and resources, right? Yeah. We're not going to build out everything. In the healthcare space is insanely large.
Right.
So we focused on what's the low hanging fruit? What's something that we are experts in and we know this and we can do it. And there's a huge unmet need and a ton of pain, economically and regulatory wise. And that's what we focused on. Now, if there was someone who said, look, we want you to build this for here, that's something that Cellarian can do because our platform's that flexible.
That's fantastic. And that's kind of where I was going, is that now that you've seen this, there's probably other solutions that the way you built it makes sense. So where do you see, like, to me, you and I were talking before the podcast a little bit. I've seen, because we've had several folks in the medical device and medical solutions space, right, which is way upstream, right? Again, it's a pre-FDA approval. And we've seen where emerging tech is absolutely all over that, right? Especially AI and robotic, process automation. Where do you see, because again, to your point, the medical and healthcare space is a massive, inefficient
by design
organism right now, right? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's just massively inefficient. It has been for a long, long time. Everyone knows it, right? But where do you see because I feel like this is the time where we can really reimagine a ton of things in the medical space that are going to change the game at the end of the day for the patient. And that's all that matters, right?
Correct. Yeah. And, the patient outcome is absolutely the way to go. And it's what we all focus on, is how do we help patients get healthier? How do we stay healthy? How do we minimize disease? How do we identify problems sooner so we can intervene earlier so the outcomes are bad? Like the original idea and product that I had nothing to do with medical necessity. It actually was based on prescription drug databases and creating a visual graphic format that would help doctors identify substance abuse earlier. Unfortunately, we weren't able to execute effectively on that, and that company didn't make it, and we evolved and pivoted, and here we are. But that being said, the opportunity, there's two things. And what I noticed in that first company was that I would go around and be like, here's this product. This is what it does. It's great. It's amazing. And, I'm completely biased in this sense, but, I can say that it is, to this day, still was the best product that was out there even today. However, I'd go to people and be like, look at this. It gives you a single glance of the patient's medication history, and it tells you that story. And look at all the lives it's going to save, because doctors don't know how to identify substance use disorders, and this is going to help them. Right. And everyone patted me on the shoulder and they said, that's really wonderful. You let me know how that goes.
Yeah. Because they didn't have the pain, right?
No, it was about money. I was showing the patient outcome benefit, but I wasn't showing the business case. And what I learned from that is you have to talk about what matters to the person, to the customer, or to the investor. And so reframing everything of like, look, here's the business case. This is how it's going to make money. This, make money, save money, however that's going to do. But here's the money case for it. And by the way, this helps people. So in that regard, I always look at it that patient care is always the primary goal. How do we help people live longer, live better, suffer less? Without question. I myself have been in recovery from substance use disorder for 24 years. So I understand all of the horrible aspect of active addiction and the suffering and the pain and all that goes on with it, as well as how wonderful recovery is and this incredible life that I have now as a result of recovery. At that same time, the reality is if you can't create a business case that is sustainable for whatever this product is, the medical product, and why do people start businesses? Yes, to help people, but to make money. Because ultimately, what I always look for is how do I help people? And again, I don't have any problem making a ton of money as the result of doing great work. And I think that that's absolutely achievable. And I think that as businesses are focusing and they're leveraging technology, and there's incredible opportunity to help patients, to drive really beneficial change, help people live longer, prevent disease, minimize the suffering. I also think you have to think about how do you do that from a business case as well, that will get the adoption that you need to actually affect that change.
I love that. It's spot on thinking. Do you know how many entrepreneurs have went through that same thing? It's like you found a hungry market or you found a big pain point, but didn't think about, right, the business case aspect of it. And honestly, Michael, a ton of us have done that. I've done that for sure, right? But and then the best part is you restarted and you figured it out, right? And here you are with a phenomenal platform, and we're so excited for you. Last question, as I always do, and then we'll let you tell everybody how to get in touch with Cellarian. But if you could fix one thing in your business with AI, what would it be?
It would actually be fixing the AI from a reliability and from an accuracy perspective.
Accuracy, yeah.
Again,
accuracy.
It's not that I need AI, fix this in my business. If we could fix the hallucinations, the accuracy, the reliability, the lack of, filling in the gaps and making things up.
Yep.
As we can solve those problems within the technology of AI, if you will, and I'm saying that in the global sense,
yep,
then I could actually leverage it much more efficiently within my business and drive it tremendously.
It's coming. And with you and your CTO, you guys could work on that. And listen, we have tons of resources if you guys need any help, but that's coming. And I think that's going to make your platform even that much more, not just valuable, but just reliable, right? And that's the whole point. And I love that you're not putting it in too soon, because you can't risk the hallucinations.
Right. Well, we leverage it in the places within the workflow where it works exceptionally well. And we've done that. So, it's our core algorithm was developed with human experts in the space, from technology and clinical and regulatory and payer policy related. And that's how it was built. So we know it works, it's accurate, it's unique and comprehensive. So we have all that. And now we're leveraging AI to help in the parts to make it more efficient, to help our development timelines, and to really deliver a better product overall. But we didn't kid ourselves to think that it would
solve.
You just plug it in and then it goes.
Right.
Because people are in for a big surprise if they're trying that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, we've experienced that as well, right? Yeah, where, like today, you have to know where it excels and where it lacks, and where it lacks, you can't risk it yet. So totally agree. Michael, this is phenomenal. Thank you for sharing. Tell everybody how to get in touch with Cellarian.
Sure. So you can find us on the web. We're www.cellarian, CELLARIAN.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, Michael Sprintz on LinkedIn. You can check
all the links will be below.
Yeah, and the links for Cellarian. We also have a LinkedIn site. Feel free, shoot me an email or shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. My personal email is msprintz, MSPRINTZ, @Cellarian.com. I am happy to help out any way that I can.
Love it. Michael, thank you so much for spending this time with us and for sharing your insights. Honestly, for all you medical practitioners out there, definitely this is a must, right? Cash flow is king for running any business, especially in medical practice where everything lags. Cellarian is definitely a godsend.
And if you're a clinical lab with toxicology, molecular, physician-owned lab, and you're having struggles with denials, prior auths, and just keeping the money that you're getting paid, we can help you with that. So give us a shout out.
Love it. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. And that ends this episode of Future Proof. We will see you tomorrow.
Awesome. Thanks, Brent.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.